Well, it's not often that I cite a Canadian study. However, there is a Canadian study that worries about an underanticipated U.S. civil war. So, first off, this is a deflection, and they're saying, don't pay attention to what's going on here. 70% of the people don't like Trudeau, and they believe he's wrecked their economy, wrecked their country. No, look down south, look to America. I will say that the study makes the bullet points are fairly decent, but their explanations are from a purely leftist standpoint. But we're going to talk about it because political commentators, conservative commentators, commentators like myself have mentioned the term civil war and the possibility for civil war. But I want to go a little bit deeper into it to see if all the markers are there for civil war to be a valid concern inside of America. Let's talk about it. I'm Jared. This is Continue Freedom. And welcome back to Continue Freedom. If this is your first time here, welcome aboard, and thank you so much for being here. So let's go ahead and talk about this. A Canadian study. It ignores growing resentment at home while telling us that, hey, maybe you ought to worry about this under-anticipated U.S. Civil War. This is from the Post-Millennial. If you dig deep into the subterranean internet files of the Canadian government, you might find a link to Policy Horizons Canada, a group that you might surmise is attached to Global Affairs Canada, but no, it's affiliated with the Federal Public Service. So this is done with the authority and from the perspective of the Canadian government. So that means it's going to be a leftist perspective, obviously. The posting of the recent study titled "Disruptions on the Horizon" might have been missed by the public had an article not been posted to Politico declaring Canada's big worry, a U.S. civil war. Well, the study didn't say that it's a big worry, that the Civil War is a big worry. In fact, it was on the what they were calling under anticipated things on the horizon, impacts on the horizon. You can see here, this is straight from that study over on the right. Civil war erupts in the United States. So that's the highest impact. We would think of this, I don't know how many veterans are going to be watching this, but most likely course of action and most dangerous course of action. That's something that we used in the military. We would say, this is what's probably going to happen. But if all hell breaks loose, this is what's going to happen. This is the absolutely most dangerous, worst case scenario. And that's where on this list you see civil war erupting in the United States. But when you look at the 10 most likely disruptions, these are not bad, bad points. Some of them are. Biodiversity is lost and ecosystems collapse, the second one down. That's their green perspective, their leftist green ideology. And is the biodiversity going to be lost in ecosystems? Are they going to collapse? No, they're not. But people cannot tell. The first point up here is the most important, I believe. And people cannot tell what is true and what is not. Folks, we are already there. We already can't tell what is true and what is not. We are being deceived at every turn by a mainstream media who is trying to control the narrative. We are by social media companies who are controlling the commentators, what commentators can, which ones you should believe, which ones you shouldn't. They're going to throttle the ones that don't meet their ideological markers, that don't tick off every box, the leftist box. So they're going to stifle certain voices and they are going to push voices like we saw it during COVID. Anybody who dare questioned the authority figures who were dictating to us how to live our lives, those people needed to be shut down, even though we have now determined that they had viable arguments, valid arguments against the dictates of the federal government. But when you don't meet the narrative, you have to be shut down. And therefore, the only narrative that can be pushed to the forefront is the official narrative of the federal government, the official narrative of the uniparty, the official narrative of our overlords. And that skews our understanding of right and wrong, fact and fiction. So we are already there. People can't tell what is true and what is not. Now, you scroll down to the third one, and people cannot afford to live on their own. We are rapidly approaching that point. It's definitely a problem in Canada right now, but in America, it's absolutely a problem. With rampant inflation, the housing market, interest rates, it has gotten absolutely out of control. Shrinkflation is another monstrous problem. Well, go down to the billionaires run the world. This is the fifth one down. Billionaires already run the world. And I will cite the first point again, which is tech giants. You've got people like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, the World Economic Forum. These billionaires who are dictating how we should live our lives. They are manipulating our economies, and they are subjugating the people. They are essentially coming after the average run-of-the-mill citizen and trying to force them into being renters, as an example. I did a video on this a few days ago. They are trying to manipulate the economy, manipulate the housing market. They want us all to be subservient to them. And they control the politicians, George Soros, attorneys generals, district attorneys. He's controlling the judicial side of things, the legal system. They have lifted the blindfold because of their billions of dollars and their political contributions. Lady Justice no longer wears a blindfold. She's peeking out of one side, making sure that the people on the left are going free. The people on the right are going to prison. We saw that during the Summer of Love, when you talk about the riots that George Soros and all of these leftist organizations were bailing out the people that were burning down generation-long businesses. Small businesses were being absolutely destroyed. George Soros, Kamala Harris donated to them. A lot of high-profile individuals were donating to these funds so that they could bail out the criminals. But then when January 6th happens, unarmed people going to the Capitol, I will continue to push that because that is fact. They say this is armed insurrection, saying that people died at the Capitol. That never happened, first off. But the people were unarmed who went into the Capitol. But they go to prison without trial, without charge, for years. All done at the hands of billionaires who ultimately control the system. So billionaires running the world, it's already there. It's already a thing. Go down to cyber attack, disabling critical infrastructure. Yes, we know that one of our key vulnerabilities in America is our power grid. It has not been hardened against any type of attack. So the likelihood of either a cyber attack or some other nefarious attack is 100% on the table. And if it were to happen, it would lead to the death of millions and millions of people and maybe potentially a civil war. Because of, once people start missing meals, that's when you really have to start worrying. But the last one, artificial intelligence runs wild. Artificial intelligence is already running wild. I was watching the other day, Marquez Brownlee, he had a video on AI video. And AI video just in the past year went from these weird, the one that he was citing was Will Smith eating spaghetti. It was really strange, and it looked like a Wes Craven type. It was really, really off. It did not look real at all. To now having passable AI video that can replace standard stock video that people would get on a website. It looks real, and it's all computer generated. Ones and zeros, that's it, completely computer generated, and it's passable. So that in and of itself is going to impact the first point. Again, people cannot tell what is true and what is not. We will see a video at some point of Donald Trump saying something he never said in a place that he never said it, or a place that he was never located, and it will be passable enough that people will believe it, because people will believe anything, and we don't know what is true and what is not. So could all these things ultimately lead to a civil war in the United States? I believe it potentially could. Now, there was a video. I'm going to throw a little comedy in here. When Canada is talking about America and they're trying to criticize America, have us speculate about all the dangers and the political divisions in America, not up here in Canada. This is what I think about.
You want me to help, Rose?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
What do you want me to do?
What about yourself? What about yourself? I'll do this one, so gonna do that. You drive! What about yourself? Go drive!
Worry about yourself, Canada. How about you worry about yourself? But the key points, again, this Canadian study was done with a very leftist point of view, but it got me thinking about the possibility for civil war here in America, and are the precursors present? To that, I will say yes, and let's go through a few of them. So, imprisoning political opposition. We know that that's a thing. We know that Donald Trump, they're going to try to put him in prison. If some people say they're going to commute a sentence, some people say that he's not actually going to go into prison. I tend to believe that they want him to be in prison, and I tend to think that that's going to be more beneficial than it's going to help him more than it's going to hurt him. Imprisoning other political opposition. So anybody that supports the guy that you are leveraging this judicial system and this legal system against, if you supported him, you're going to go to prison. Steve Bannon, George Papadopoulos, Roger Stone. So they're going after and using the legal system as well to shut down media networks like Alex Jones and InfoWars. So They've weaponized the federal government. They've weaponized the intel and federal law enforcement agencies against political opposition. They are silencing the speech of political opposition. We saw that during COVID. We see it now in an election year. I've personally experienced it on my YouTube channel, that you get to a certain point and there's a spike in viewership and you think, I'm riding this wave up and up and up. And then the next thing you know, it flatlines, and your impressions and people being able to see your content, it's not there. Why? Because this is election interference. You control the message. You control the minds of the voters. So silencing speech of political opposition, continuing to threaten to disarm people. People on the right are gun-friendly folks. We are ones that believe in the Second Amendment. We believe in our right to self-preservation. More so, we believe that those rights are given to us by our Creator, by God, not by the federal government. And we are up against people who believe that the federal government is the genesis of your rights, not God. There can't be anything above the federal government because that's the way the leftist mindset works. We've got the testing of limits that we saw during COVID. They have tested the limits of government authoritarianism, and how far can they push it? How far will the average American go in turning in their fellow citizens, in locking themselves at the behest of the government, locking themselves in their homes, abusing their children by masking them and by forcing certain things into their bodies, injecting certain things into their bodies? We've seen foot soldiers mobilized on behalf of the left. Look at Antifa, look at BLM. These are people who have the top cover of the federal government. As I said before, with the billionaires running the world, they set up funds to bail these people out of prison so that they could continue to burn down cities, take over government buildings, kill people, injure people. And it's all being pushed by the same leftist narrative, the ones that control the media. So they are trying to, they make this hive mindset that is, normally you see it in a place like New York. That's the hive mindset. People start thinking alike. People start, they don't see opposing viewpoints because they are all crammed into one tiny space. And the people who have the free will and the free thought to, maybe this isn't quite right, they can't speak out about it. They have to be silent about that. But the hive mindset is a real thing. And they are trying to create that on a global scale, And so the foot soldiers, like I said, this is all behind their political ideology. And then we have to look at the opposition. So we as conservatives, who are the ones that are actually going to fight in this civil war, if there is a civil war? Well, we the people believed that our republic was under fire and that an election was stolen. And I include myself in this group of people. I believe that the election was stolen. I believe that 2020 was not a legitimate election, that there was more fraud than anybody is letting on. I know that a lot of the politicians don't want to talk about it, even though we've seen it on the internet. It slips through the algorithm every now and then, and you will be fed, like in Georgia, hundreds of thousands of votes that were incorrect, hundreds of thousands of fraudulent votes. But they don't want to talk about that because if it makes it to the light of day that the election in 2020 was, if all the evidence is laid out and they say, yes, this election was lost by Donald Trump because of fraudulent activity, then our republic, our democratic process will be shook to its very core. Well, it already has been for some of us, because we know that. It's just a matter of making more and more people aware of it. But I digress on that one. When we believed that happened, the best we did was go unarmed to the Capitol to express our First Amendment right of our right of free speech. We went unarmed. We were shot at with, and I say we, I wasn't there, but people were shot at with beanbag rounds and rubber bullets and flashbangs and tear gas. And it wasn't until a couple of hours after that, when finally they had had enough, that they pushed their way into the Capitol, unarmed people. And what did that give the government the opportunity to do? Come down on them with the full weight of federal law enforcement, the legal system, to arrest them without charge, put them in prison without trial. And then you see 70-year-old women going to prison for years for simply walking in to the Capitol building, their building, taking some photos and leaving, and they are called an insurrectionist. So do I think that those same people are going to take up arms against their fellow citizens? I have a hard time believing that would happen. I have a very hard time believing it would happen. It could, but we also know that a lot of the people on the right, in if you look at the military itself, these are the most prepared people in our society, veterans, folks like that. These people vote overwhelmingly Republican, and we have just got out of a 25-year war. So we have a large number of veterans who know what war is, and they know that war against their fellow citizens is not something that they are willing to take lightly, even though people say it, some of the pundits and folks say it's going to be civil war. And, I don't think they have an understanding of what war actually is and the damage that would be done by Americans killing Americans. We've seen it historically, but in this day and age, that's a fight that I don't think many people are willing to fight. So I can't give you a definitive answer because I can't tell the future. I don't know exactly what will happen, but all the precursors are there. The question is, do the Americans that are going to be fighting in that fight have the stomach to do it? I question whether or not that is the case. And I pray to God that it never happens. I hope that a Donald Trump presidency, a long string of conservatives, of people who can roll back our spending, who can improve our economy, who can make the standard of living better in America, who can take this powerful economy and fix it as opposed to continue to destroy it, who can fix the inflation problems. I believe that is going to do a great deal to turn the tide. Independent media outlets speaking the truth, not speaking the party line, not following the uniparty directives of messaging, but speaking the truth. That's what's going to ultimately save this republic, and that's what's ultimately going to avoid a civil war. So while this Canadian study, well, you can read it. You can go to the Post Millennial, find that article, and read it. And it's all done from a leftist point of view, so don't take it as anything factual. But the bullet points themselves of potential disruptions, some of them are valid. Some of them have already happened. And we've seen that with billionaires running the world, with people not knowing right from wrong, truth from fiction, our vulnerability to cyber attack and artificial intelligence leading to deep fakes and things that will eventually distort the truth. Yeah, all the precursors are there with the federal government leveraged against the people and against political opposition. But I don't think the people have the stomach for it, at least not yet. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments below. We're on X Locals, Rumble, and YouTube, and I'll see you in the next video. Love you guys.